Beloved of God, I greet you in the precious name of our risen Lord and Savior, Jesus the Christ. As we draw closer to our season of holy conferencing and the final session that will address disaffiliations under paragraph 2553 of the Book of Discipline, I want to provide a synopsis of how we arrived at this juncture, offer factual information of where things stand, and how the process will conclude. By way of background, since the special session of General Conference held in 2019, congregations and clergy have had the opportunity to engage in discernment around their desire to remain within the United Methodist Church or to pursue disaffiliation under paragraph 2553. That paragraph was promulgated chiefly to create a relaxation of the United Methodist Church's trust clause, not found elsewhere in the Book of Discipline. In the ensuing years, some congregations have met all of the prescribed requirements to disaffiliate and retain their property. Those decisions have been ratified without exception during meetings of the annual conference. We also currently have numerous congregations that entered the process in a timely manner and are actively discerning their path. Conversely, other congregations completed the discernment process and have decided to remain within the United Methodist Church. Lastly, there are some congregations who began the process but determined that they could not meet the financial requirements of disaffiliation. I will address that circumstance later in the video. So there's some lingering questions. Both the Baltimore-Washington and Peninsula Delaware conferences have provided information during town halls and webinars, posted specifics about disaffiliation on conference websites, printed frequently asked questions, and held meetings in each district and numerous local churches. This matter has also been discussed at every session of annual conference since 2019. I personally asked every clergy person and lay leader serving in our conferences to share all of this information with their respective congregations. It is hard to fathom that anyone actively participating in the life of the United Methodist Church has not had access to this information. If you would like to review what has already been provided, I strongly encourage you to watch the recorded town hall video from last fall, where we address many of the facts, the history, and guidelines related to disaffiliation. The video and accompanying frequently asked questions can be found on the conference websites. As we prepare for our respective annual conference sessions, where clergy and lay members will vote on granting approval for churches who have met the 2/3 threshold and wish to finalize their disaffiliation decisions, we want to answer as many questions as possible to hopefully streamline that process. Some have asked whether the terms and conditions of disaffiliation are debatable. The Board of Trustees of each annual conference was given the responsibility to set the terms and establish the process for congregations seeking to disaffiliate. Our conference trustees discerned that congregations seeking to disaffiliate must remit 50% of the appraised value of their property, along with other enumerated amounts. This decision was made to honor the faithful contributions of those who served in the past and to ensure a fruitful future of mission and ministry. The Judicial Council has consistently ruled that unless the trustees' policy violates the spirit of paragraph 2553, it is non-debatable. Congregations that meet all the requirements, including a 2/3 vote of the professing members present and voting at a church conference, a majority vote of the annual conference, and payment of all disaffiliation costs, will be officially disaffiliated on the date that all of their paperwork and payments are received by the conference board of trustees, those congregations who have chosen litigation. Some congregations have pursued legal action against the conference in an attempt to bypass the process outlined in paragraph 2553. In conformity with other paragraphs of the Book of Discipline, if legal action is pursued, the disciplinary process is put on hold. However, the time frame within which a congregation may complete the disaffiliation process will not change. Therefore, if the lawsuit is not resolved, or a congregation does not withdraw from the lawsuit in time to have their disaffiliation voted upon at this year's session of annual conference, the congregation will not be able to pursue disaffiliation. The upcoming annual conference session is the only option for ratifying a church's vote to disaffiliate under paragraph 2553. Now let's talk about the vote that will take place at annual conference. All congregations that successfully complete the process outlined by paragraph 2553 and the conference board of trustees will be placed on one ballot at their annual conference session. We will vote on the entire list of disaffiliating congregations en masse, which will require a simple majority vote of the annual conference members present and voting. We will then engage in a time of prayer and lament for our brothers and sisters who are departing. This approach allows us to take the required action, prayerfully recognize this unprecedented moment in the life of our annual conference, and still maximize our priority of celebrating mission and ministry as we live into the future of the United Methodist Church. The annual conference has the duty to ratify the decision of the local congregations. However, that duty cannot and should not overwhelm the larger purpose of the annual conference. If there is concern that the integrity of paragraph 2553 or any part of the disaffiliation process, including the procedures laid out by the annual conference, were violated, then a church may be lifted from the ballot for individual consideration. However, that request must specifically identify how paragraph 2553 or the trustee's policy was violated with evidence. What happens if the annual conference does not approve a local church's vote to disaffiliate? If the annual conference does not affirm a particular disaffiliation, then the congregation remains with the United Methodist Church. There is no other mechanism to disaffiliate at this time. The General Conference could make new provisions in their future sessions, but currently the only provision for disaffiliation expires on December 31st, 2023. There will not be a special session of annual conference to consider any congregation that does not receive the requisite approval. Now, what I am about to share with you should be apparent, but let me state it clearly here. While I don't want to see anyone leave, I understand that some have prayerfully discerned that they cannot remain within the United Methodist Church. Even if a congregation does not meet the requirements to disaffiliate, individual members have always been able to seek to live out their faith in another denomination or congregation. The inability to remove a building from a United Methodist Conference is not tantamount to being held hostage. Choosing to remain within the United Methodist Church is a personal decision, and one that I hope you will choose to do knowing that we can serve God together. But again, no one who chooses to remain is being held hostage. completion of the process. I want to again remind everyone that individuals and congregations have had the opportunity to discern whether or not they want to remain within the United Methodist Church since 2019. That means we have been engaged in this process for 4 years. Paragraph 2553 expires on December 31st of this year. That means everything, both legal and financial, must be satisfied before that date. There are matters that must be attended to after the annual conference approves a congregation's ability to disaffiliate. The conference trustees, the chancellor, and the chief financial officer must prepare, review, and execute documents for processing and filing. For the protection of the local congregation and the resources of our staff, we are offering a schedule that will allow ample time for paperwork to be finalized and adjusted should unforeseen circumstances arise. Failure to comply with this process will jeopardize the congregation's ability to disaffiliate. Let's look at the reality of disaffiliation. A congregation that votes to disaffiliate is choosing to leave the denomination. This means that the congregation will have no connection to the United Methodist Church. The members will no longer be United Methodist. The congregation cannot use the cross and flame symbol. They will no longer participate in the annual conference sessions. The members of the disaffiliating congregation cannot serve as delegates to general or jurisdictional conference. The cabinet will no longer discern, and the bishop will no longer appoint clergy to serve as its pastor. The disaffiliating congregation will no longer make payments to the annual conference for mission and ministry, often referred to as apportionments. Correspondingly, they will not be eligible for any grants or assistance from the annual conference. The conference office has received calls from disaffiliated congregations asking for a new pastor. Let me reiterate that once a congregation finalizes their disaffiliation process, they are no longer United Methodist and will not participate in any United Methodist program or process. It should be clear that clergy and laity cannot hold membership in more than one denomination. If a clergy person continues to serve a disaffiliated congregation, their membership in the United Methodist Church will be terminated. They do not lose their ordination status, but they will no longer be clergy within the United Methodist Church. Active United Methodist clergy who remain in the United Methodist Church will not be appointed to churches that disaffiliate. The Judicial Council has affirmed that superintendents have the right to inquire as to whether or not a clergy person is remaining within the denomination. This information is necessary for the cabinet to complete their work. Although elders are guaranteed an appointment, failure to participate in the appointment process in good faith may jeopardize the options available for an appointment in the current appointment season. Those already appointed will not be displaced to accommodate late requests for an appointment. Clergy who disaffiliate will not lose their pension earnings, and they can keep those funds invested at Westpath. Please visit the Westpath website or contact them directly for more information. Congregational concerns. Some have expressed a concern that if the congregation remains with the United Methodist Church, the residential bishop will appoint a pastor wholly inconsistent with their theological and scriptural beliefs. First and foremost, I want to make it exceedingly clear that the superintendents and I take the appointment process very seriously. And we know that the United Methodist Church has a commitment to open itinerancy. As we live into that commitment, it would not benefit the pastor, the congregation, or the conference to appoint clergy whose beliefs are not in keeping with a congregation's core theological and scriptural interpretations. Clergy are appointed to local churches by the bishop, but only after consultation with the local church. While we seek a time when all clergy who have been duly called by God and affirmed by our boards are able to serve in any of our congregations, we know that context is critical to making fruitful appointments. We always seek to make appointments that will help all those involved to thrive. Remaining with the United Methodist Church if my church disaffiliates. It is important to know that even though your church may vote to disaffiliate, you do not have to leave with that congregation. In most every church conference vote that has been held to date, the decision has not been unanimous. That means that not every member wishes to leave the United Methodist Church. I want to speak a word of hope and direction to those of you who wish to remain. It is important that you transfer your membership before the final date of disaffiliation. Otherwise, your membership in the United Methodist Church will lapse. There is a place for you within this United Methodist Church, and there are congregations willing and waiting to welcome you with open arms. While it is regrettably not with the congregation you've called your church home for some time, there are hundreds of other Methodist congregations ready to receive you. Please speak with your district superintendent, who can help you find a new faith community if you have not already identified one. And if you need time to breathe, heal, and adjust to the loss of your worshiping community, we have prepared a way for you to do so. We have identified a number of lighthouse congregations where you can move your membership temporarily until you are ready to consider where you would like to become an active participant. Please check the conference website for further information about these lighthouse congregations. Beloved, I lament every congregation and member that has or will withdraw from our beloved United Methodist Church. I sincerely believe that we can serve God together within our differing beliefs and understandings. You will not find full unanimity of theological or scriptural belief within any denomination or independent congregation. It does not exist. Yet, fruitful and faithful ministry does take place within these diverse bodies. There is a place for you within this denomination. There is a place for you in the future of the United Methodist Church. Let's continue inviting others into discipleship in order to transform the world. May God richly bless you.